This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.
So my entire childhood was going off to dance classes. And then from, I think, the ages of 8 to 18, I competed in ballet, tap, and jazz. And then I went away to college. I wanted to go and be like a professional dancer and be a ballerina, but my mom was like, no, you're going to college. You're smart. You're going to college. So I went away to college and I discovered a love of theater. And so I did theater in college and I was like the dancer in the theater group. And then I want to say, what was I? Late 20s. And this was after having injured my knee and having a couple of knee surgeries. A friend of mine I met doing theater, she's now my best friend, got me into ballroom dancing. So I want to say I was 28 when I started. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. It was very different from anything I did growing up. And you do it with a partner. It's Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And it's just like the pretty princess waltzing. And you're just like, oh, it's so wonderful. I love it. It's so much fun. So around like January, February, I started actually with cognitive symptoms. I was very forgetful, brain fog. I was making stupid mistakes at work. And I was like, this isn't me. I have a history of ADHD. I was diagnosed with that when I was about 10 years old. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to go back on medication, go to therapy. So I signed up with a therapist. I started seeing a psychologist and I asked, maybe can I go back on medication? Because I hadn't been on medication in a while. They said, we'll put you on medication, but we want you to have an EKG and some blood work done first. So I went and I got myself a GP. I had the EKG and the blood work done. When the blood work came back, it turned out I had an autoimmune called Hashimoto's, and that was a shock. So I started on like a crazy diet and Synthroid for the Hashimoto's, but then I started having other symptoms. I noticed issues with like balance and coordination. I would notice during my lessons, like I would randomly lose balance, and I'm like, what the heck is wrong with me? And there was one day I was working at my job in New York City and I'm walking to the subway and I got dizzy and I wiped out on the sidewalk. It was so scary. Thankfully, some good Samaritans came and picked me up. I came across some friends. They put me in a cab. I go back to my GP. She said, let's order an MRI of your brain. Okay, fine. And in the midst of all of this, having trouble at work and everything, I lost my job. This leads us up to mid-May of this year. And I lost my job. That was devastating. And then eventually I had the MRI and I didn't even come out of the room. They had my GP on the phone and they said, you need to go to the hospital right away. We found a tumor and a significant amount of fluid in your brain. And I'm just like, what? It was a complete shock. It was just, it blew me away. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Is this a joke? And of course it wasn't a joke. And I had my mom with me, thank God. We packed a bag and she took me immediately to Westchester Medical Center. And I had no idea like what kind of tumor it was, how big it was, what the deal was, but I was terrified. And from there, they admitted me and they did all kinds of tests and looked at my MRI and everything. And believe it or not, it wasn't the tumor that was the biggest problem. It was the hydrocephalus, the fluid that was in my brain. And it took a few days, but they put me into surgery and they ended up doing, I believe it was a craniectomy and a biopsy on the tumor. And then they did a fluid redirect, I believe it's called. And we thought that took care of the problem. They sent me home. 2 weeks later, I had suture. It was leaking. And I was like, what is this? This is not blood. Like it was cerebral spinal fluid I was leaking. And so I ended up having to go back again. And they ended up having to do a VP shunt. And again, that took a little while. They sent me home. It was only like a few days later, I ended up having an infection and I had to go back again. And they had to do a procedure. This is like procedure number 3, I think, at this point. They took out the shunt, put me on antibiotics. And again, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So I was in and out of the hospital all summer this year. It was awful. And it turns out I've had this tumor. It's referred to as Lhermitte-Duclos disease. It's incredibly rare. I'm one of maybe under 300 cases ever recorded of this particular type of tumor. It's so weird. The adult oncologist came and consulted with me, and she almost washed her hands of me. She was like, if it grows or something comes of it, then come talk to me. And my neurosurgeon, who I absolutely love, didn't love that answer. And I'm now part of a neuro-oncology clinic that he works in. And it's mainly for children. And like this type of tumor is mainly something that they find in children. So now they have me as part of this clinic. And what's really cool is that I feel like they're treating me as a whole person and not just as like this freak medical case. I have an oncologist and my neurosurgeon who are treating me medically. And then they're also having me see neuropsychologists. They want to do cognitive testing and look at me cognitively. And then also psychologically, make sure I'm doing okay emotionally. And I'm like, this is amazing. You're treating me as a whole person and not just as like a freakazoid medical case. It turned 40 this year, and it was almost like Pandora's box open. The biggest challenges I'm going to have to come up with, and for now, I'm just recovering and recouping. But eventually, I have to re-answer the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? Because I lost my job. And so I've just been convalescing and healing the last few months. I found a therapist that I'm so glad that I did, because the woman that I got paired with, I actually went through an app called the BetterHelp app. And they paired me with this woman and we clicked, thank goodness. And she's just been a wonderful support for me. And she's helping me to process all of these emotions and things that I've gone through. I've learned through all of this. And my mantra the last few months has been, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. This is not forever. This too shall pass. Don't unpack and live there. Feel the feels, but don't unpack and live there. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this. I used to have a tendency to mask and pretend like everything was good. And I'm actually coming to a place now where I'm working through my emotions and I'm trying to be more authentic in the way that I act and express myself. And if I'm having a bad day, I'm having a bad day. If I'm having a good day, great. And I'm actually letting myself feel the feelings instead of like just putting on a stiff upper lip or putting on a happy face and pretending like it's okay. Don't give up. Do whatever you have to do to cope, to deal, to feel good, as long as it's not self-destructive. I have wonderful family and friends. They've been there. They've been there for me. They've helped me up. They've all been wonderful as well. Yeah, they've kept my spirits up. They've kept me going. Otherwise, I don't know. It's just been a rough road, and I'm just so glad I've had the support that I've had.
This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.